So guys, from today we're starting translation on FortiGate Firewall. Okay, let me see. So let's please check your recording permission now. Anyone else missing for recording? So today's topic is translation. I guess last time I told you guys to go through our translations, right? Tell me, what do you know about the translation? Why translation is required? Why translation is required? Tell me. Preserving public IPs. Okay. For a secure connection. Okay. Multiple guys you told for secure connection. Tell me, guys, while doing a translation, what type of security you get? What type of security do you get when you do a translation? It helps to reuse the IP. Okay. In what sense do you think, Arvind, that it helps you to reuse the IP address? Bima, Arun, Sahind, I want you guys to tell, like those who have written like security, tell me what type of security do you get? If two sites we have a same IP, don't give such reasons. Okay, that's one of the condition. Mm. See, Arvind, when you say reuse, in what sense did we reuse the IP? We haven't reused, right? We translated in other, see, two sites also when we had a same subnet, we translated it to the other subnet, right? That was private to private translation. That wasn't actually other translation means public translation, right? Hide internal addressing. You are hiding the IP addresses purposefully. Some reason is there. I'm like, why do you need to hide the IP? When you do a translation, it automatically gets hidden, right, Silas? When you do a translation, it automatically gets hidden, right? So there is nothing like we are purposefully hiding any IP. That's not the reason. Okay. We have limited number of public IPs. To save our public IPs, we use a translation. That's a correct answer. Okay. Arun, effective communication. Do you think with the private IP, when we do the communication through the tunnel, it's not a effective communication? Or in your local area, or in some other conditions, like in a VPN also we do, like we have overlapping type of VPNs where we translate from private to private itself. See, translations can be done in any scenarios to get your output. Okay. My simple question was, why do we need a translation? Okay. I get so many of reasons in which I get different answers. See, while you hide the IP, it's not that you are intentionally hiding any IP. Very first thing. See, my question was, it was very simple for you guys. Like, why do we need to do a translation, or why translation is required? Okay. It's not about hiding IP. When you do a translation, what type of translation you are doing, that also it depends. If I translate same IP with the same IP, right? Let's say, if I translate 10.11.11.1 with 10.11.11.1, in this case, did we hide any type of identity? Did we hide any IP address? So here that sense means that thing does not come. This is different type of translation. This also comes under one of the translation only. Okay, this is called identity NAT. Okay, additional security by translation. What type of security? You know, this word, when it says additional security, I don't understand, like, what type of security? Does a translation help you to do a encryption? Does it add a hash value? Is there any type of such things getting added to our data? So what is security? Translating one IP to another IP, is that is that a security? Are you securing your data in any manner? No, you aren't securing your data in any manner. So when we don't secure our data, how come your logic stands for it provides a security? See, in Google, when you search translation reasons, you'll get multiple reasons, but does not mean all of them are correct. You have to practically think about it. Whenever you are doing a translation, are you getting any security? No. What do you do with the translation? You basically enable a communication, right? How? Translating your private IP to a public IP or public IP to a private IP can be any scenario. So basically translating one IP to another IP, or can be with the same IP, depending on a scenario, depends. See, overall, the major concept behind our translation is to save your IPv4 public IPs. In IPv4, total how much IP addresses do you have, guys? Total how much IP addresses do you have in IPv4? 2 to the power 32, right? 2 to the power 32. That's basically a total number of addresses available in IPv4. In this 2 to the power 32, we have a range of private IPs. We have a class A, range of public and private you have. Right. If you separate just the private ranges, rest all are public, right? Like that also you can differentiate. So you have a class A, you have a class B, you have a class C that we use for communication purpose, isn't it? We do have a class D and we do have a class E. So class D and class E are used for different purposes, right? Multicast and broadcast purposes. So generally for communication in our local area or over the internet, we use private or public addresses, correct? So in this class A, class B, and class C, total number of public addresses that we have available, do you think that's sufficient for the internet growing users? Total number of internet growing users, if I start providing single public IP, do you think it will be sufficient to provide the public IP? See, if you talk about 2010, 2012, that time, how many of you were aware of internet? Or if you were aware also, you know, before cell phone and all, no one were aware of internet so much. After that, they were aware of cell phones, smartphones came, and you know, then they started accessing, the internet and all, right? So if you see a history, like you all of you are aware of it, like if you see 2010, 2010 to 2013, 14 around, if you see, you were accessing 2G technology, right? 2013, 14 onwards, they started 3G technology. And after that, I guess 2016, they started 4G and all, something like that. Okay. So not sure about dates. Okay. So just approximately, I'm telling you like how the things were changed. And as the internet and the smartphone, as the smartphones came into a picture, in India, since Ambani, when they started, free internet access from that time in a geo cells, rapidly internet users in India, they have increased, right? Isn't it? So right now, in today's date, if you see, like just in India, forget about worldwide, just in India, do you think anyone, even they are not in a, villages, if they are in a villages also, if you see, interior area, or if you see everywhere, right now compared to 2015 and 2000, 2020 onwards, if you see, you might have seen a massive difference, right, in terms of internet users, correct? So basically what I'm trying to tell you, every day, the users are increasing, and to fulfill the requirement currently for growing number of internet users, it's not sufficient with 2 to the power 32. In that, whatever the range of public IPs we have, that's not enough actually. So, so slowly the things are moving to IPv6. Okay, in IPv6 right now, we have sufficient number of public addresses that can be provided, okay, to each and every to each and every users for upcoming 50 to 60 years. That much public IP addresses we have, don't need translation. That much public addresses we have for communication. But coming to IPv4, your ISP is still working with IPv4. Okay, side by side they are using IPv6 as well. You might have seen, when you go to the IP addresses, you might have seen some of the, ISPs, or some of the uh, like service providers like Airtel, or if you see other vendors, you might have seen, along with IP addresses, they are also providing IPv6 address. Check in your mobiles as well, you'll see. Not everywhere, but yes, they have started using IPv6 as well. So upcoming might be after 5 years or after some time, IPv6 will be widely used. Okay. So currently, most of the places we are working with IPv4. So it's like 90% we are working with IPv4 itself. So currently, you'll be working with IPv4. So in IPv4, total number of addresses, public addresses, forget about private addresses that we have. Okay, the public addresses which we have is not sufficient for growing number of users. So what we have to do, we need to save the public addresses. So how do you save the public address? What's the solution? Now, you guys are, some of you guys are working, some of you guys might have seen. Let's say I have an organization. In an organization, if I have thousands of employees, right? So for thousands of employees, if I try to buy a single IP, public IP, do you think it's a good idea to save the public IPs? If I purchase, say in terms of cost, in terms of saving the public IP, are you saving your public IPs if you provide a the public IP to each and every employees? Is that possible, guys? So we don't do that. Now let's say if I'm not connected with internet, if I if I connect thousands of employees in my organization, okay, if I want them to interconnect with each other, do I need a internet? Do I need a public IP? See, if I just want to communicate in my local area network, in my LAN network, if I want to communicate thousands of employees, do I need a public IP? That's my question. No need. So how do you communicate? By using a private IPs. I'll use a private IPs for a communication in a local area network. Correct? Now, instead of providing them another IP, another public IP to communicate with the internet, what if I use a single public IP? What if I use a single public IP to provide a internet access to thousands of employees? For thousands of employees, I'll just use a single public IP to provide a internet access. Don't you think it's like saving the public IPs? Obviously, your cost is also saved, plus you're saving the public IPs as well. This is actually this is actually called what? Saving the public IPs. This is the place where actually we need a translation. Okay. So there are different scenarios wherein you need a translations. Let's say I have a DMZ zone. In DMZ zone, I kept one server right now. Do you think in a real scenarios in your data center, you might have only a single server? No, right? This is not the architecture of a DMZ. DMZ might have a separate architecture. In DMZ, I might have a application servers. First of all, I might have a load balancer. I might have a web servers. Web servers again connected to the application servers. It can be a huge architecture in a DMZ also. Depends what type of organization you are running. In my server, in my DMZ, I might have 10 servers. I might have 15 servers. Right. I might have 50 servers. Do you think What do you think about Google data center? What do you think about Facebook data center? Do they have this, 5, 10, 20, 50, servers only? Correct. It's very huge. That's why I'm telling, can be any scenario. Okay. It can be a scenario like getting an access from the outside to your servers or providing an internet access to my internal users to get an internet access. Scenarios can be different. Okay, but overall our concept is to save the public IPs. Okay, so how do we save the public IP? By using a translation. And what type of translations do we need? That we have to understand. What are the scenarios in which translations will be required? That we have to understand. Okay, so if anyone is asking you why do we need a translation, first of all, explain them, like why in IPv4 translation is required. We need to save our public IPs. Now depends like who is taking your interview or what type of mentality that guy is having. Okay. So depending on that, you also should tell the types of translations. Okay. See, coming to types of translation, it's a different thing. But why do we need a translation? You can tell them these reasons, like in IPv4, we have a shortage of public IPs, so we need a temporary solution, and temporary solution is translation. Okay, and since our ISP does not work with public IPs, does not work with private IPs, it only works with the public IP. Your ISP works only with the public IPs, does not work with the private IPs. So whenever you send any packet to a ISP does not have any routing for the private IPs, so packets will get dropped, right? So if I want to communicate with ISP or through ISP, obviously I need to translate my private IPs into a public IP to get routed over the internet. Such type of reasons you guys can give. Okay. But do not say security is provided by doing a translation, or we are hiding the private IP behind the public IP. Why would you do that? Why would you hide the private IP behind the public IP for getting internet access? It's by default happening. It's by default happening. When you're translating one IP to another IP, by default your private IP identity is getting hidden. Okay, you are not intentionally hiding it for, your purpose. Your intention is not for hiding the private IP. Your intention is for providing the internet access. For that you are translating. When you translate, automatically your private IP gets hidden behind the public IP. Am I clear, guys? Why do we need a translation? Now tell me, how many types of translations do you know? That NAT and PAT comes under what? See, generally, if you talk about types of translation, okay, you'll have dynamic or static. You have only two types. Okay. And under this dynamic and static, again, we, use different types. Under the dynamic and static, again, what we have? We have dynamic NAT, or we have dynamic PAT, isn't it? Same happens with the static also. Here also you have static NAT, or we have a static PAT. So if you guys understand these many types of translations properly, if you understand what's basically a dynamic, what's basically a static, under the dynamic and static, what is dynamic NAT, what is static NAT, okay, what is dynamic PAT and what is a static PAT, if you understand, then you can use these translations as per your requirement. I'll give you a scenario. In that scenario, you have to tell which translation will be appropriate. Okay, understand in a different way. First of all, you have to understand types of translations. First of all, we understood why do we need a translation. Then we understand types of translations. Okay, though we aren't doing all the translations here. Okay, when you guys come to like Cisco classes, when you'll come to like ASA classes, FTD classes, there you guys will see all the translations, around 7 types of translations I'll show you. Okay, in that classes, like ASA class, I'll show you around 7 type of translations. So here I'm not going to show practically all the translations, but yes, dynamic and static, some I'll show you. Okay, so first of all, understand the types of scenarios, then put those translations as per the scenario. Now let's say, what would you be translating when you apply this dynamic or the static translation? What would you translate? I would translate either source, or I would translate destination, right? Or both, right? This can be a use case. Now, either I have to, translate the source, or I need to translate the destination, or I need to translate both at a time. Can be possible. So scenarios will come. Now, you have to understand in which case we need to translate the source, in which case we need to translate the destination, or in which case we need to translate both. Those are the different use cases. Guys, are you getting my point, what I'm saying? See, now onwards, your vision will be different. The way of looking into translation will be different. Till now, whatever you guys have seen in your CCNA and or in another classes, what you have seen is directly we implement dynamic NAT, dynamic PAT, static NAT, or static PAT. Okay, but now the things are changing. Now you guys have to learn according to real-time scenarios as well. Okay, because in a real time, whenever you go for an interview and all, they'll give you a scenario based questions will be there. They'll not directly tell you, explain me what's dynamic NAT. They'll give you a scenario. In that scenario, they'll ask you, tell me what type of translation would be appropriate, who should get translated. Now you should be aware of all the translation types. First you have to decide who should get translated. First of all, understand what's a scenario. Based on scenario, you have to decide who should get translated. Out of this, who should get translated. Once you find who should get translated, after that you have to decide to get the output based on that scenario, which translation would be appropriate. This is how you have to calculate the things. Now, for example, I'm asking you, I don't expect a right answer, but let's see. Some few of you guys are working as well, or you guys have seen translations in CCNA or some other classes. So based on that, I'm asking you. Let's say this is my inside and outside. Now let's say this is my internal home network. This is my FortiGate firewall as a gateway. This is my ISP, and this is my home network. In my home network, I have around 100 employees. Okay, it's a small organization wherein 100 employees are working. They need an internet access. Okay, so these employees are currently intercommunicating with, basically they are, they are communicating in a local area network itself. In a LAN network, they are communicating. Now they have a requirement of internet access. So tell me, first thing, who should get translated, source or destination or both? Who should get translated here in this scenario? So this is how, first of all, you have to decide who should get translated. So somewhere you'll see this scenario called as a source translation or outgoing translation. You can tell any one of these things. You can tell it as a source translation, or you can say outgoing translation. Yeah, I'll be uploading class videos. You guys getting point, right? Such type of translations, we also call it as a source NAT or source translation. See, you don't take source NAT as a source network address translation in the sense, in a different way. Saying source NAT means basically saying source translation. Okay, technically NAT means different thing, PAT means different thing, right? So don't assume I'm talking about a dynamic NAT. Okay, technically, you see, why I didn't use a source NAT as a keyword. There was a some reason behind that. If I say NAT keyword has some other meaning, PAT keyword has some other meaning. Translation tells that you are doing a translation. You are translating the IP. When you say NAT or when you add a PAT keyword, that NAT and PAT keyword has some other meaning. Okay, that's why I didn't use that keyword as a source NAT or destination NAT. I didn't use that. Whenever you guys are going from inside to outside, and when you have a group of private IP addresses who needs a internet access, in such case, in such scenario, you use a source translation. You you are only a guy, I mean, like, your internal network is with the private IP who needs a internet access. On internet, it can be any servers which are already available with the public IPs. So I don't have to think about the destination translation. What I have to think about is my private networks should get translated with public IP. So source will also become public and destination is already in a public. So source and destination, both, when it becomes public, there is a communication over the internet, right? So in this case, only one translation has to be done. That's your source NAT. And such type of translation is also called in a real time as a outgoing translation. Okay, I mean, like, source translation or the outgoing translation. Now another use case I'm giving you. Okay, now we understood here. Let's complete this part itself. Here we understood in the first scenario, in this scenario we understood I need to translate my source. After knowing I need to translate the source, since it's a source translation, which type of translation would be appropriate to apply here? Now you have to choose the types of translation that you have, type of translation you have to apply here. Tell me, which translation would be fine? Tell me, guys, what type of translation? So are you getting point? Like, how should you understand the scenario? How should you decide what should get translated first, and how should you decide what type of translations would get applied on top of that? Now your concept is getting clear, like how to understand the translation. So let's understand what's dynamic. First of all, we'll understand what's dynamic, then we'll understand what's static, then we'll understand the differences between static NAT, dynamic NAT and static NAT, dynamic PAT and static PAT. Then we'll see few translations and then it will be completed. Tell me, guys, what happens in a dynamic NAT? What happens in a dynamic NAT? NAT source IP to public IP automatically, no manual configuration. Private is translated to pool of addresses or fixed entry. Port no we change. Port no will change. Okay. Before I get into dynamic
And
and static,
port numbers, sir. Port
uh,
number, like
okay, sorry,
port numbers will
I
change.
got it wrong. No, in dynamic NAT port, there is nothing to do with the port numbers. Nothing to do with the port numbers. Dynamic NAT, it's like a pool of public addresses we have that we use for a translation. Exactly, I'll talk about it. Okay, before I get into this dynamic and static, as I have shown you one scenario over here, let me tell you one more scenario and answer me what type of, who should get translated here. Let's say I have 10 servers. 10 servers I have in DMZ zone. This is my DMZ zone. And I have, 100 employees working from home. They need access to our DMZ servers. So tell me what type of translation should be, first of all, tell me who should get, who should get translated here first. So you are looking in a perspective of employees, right? In a perspective of employees, when you see, wait, I'm coming to that point, Arvind. When I see in a perspective of employees, then you think our destination should get translated. So in a perspective of employees, it becomes a destination translation, correct? Okay, I'm telling you other way. I'm asking you the same question. I need servers to get a internet access. Now what will happen? I need a servers to get a internet access. Now it's a source translation, right? So tell me a solution that fulfills both of the requirements. My servers also should get an access to internet, and the same IP should be used, or the same thing should be, same translation should be used to get an access from the outside to DMZ servers. What type of translation would you apply? See, I have conditions here. Servers should be static, users are dynamic. That's correct. So static translation will be used. Now, let's say, for example, I said I should get an access to a servers, right? So I should get translated to the servers. Then the first thing what you have to understand, it's a static translation. Why? Because the server's IP addresses, if it changes, do you think you'll get an access to a same server every time? If I put a dynamic IP for these servers, if they receive different IP addresses every time, will your users get an access to fixed servers? No. First thing we need to understand, we need a fixed IP. When it's fixed IP, then the thing you have to understand, it's a static. Fixed IP, fixed scenario means static. Now depends. You need a bidirectional communication or you need a unidirectional communication. I told you guys about the bidirectional communication. 10 servers I have. I need a same IP to get a internet access, also same IP to get an access to a outside access to a DMZ also. So I would suggest you guys to go with the static translation, static NAT. For 10 servers, 10 public IP addresses required. Okay. And that will be bidirectional. Now, if your scenario is I need a single IP to get used for the particular services, if you limit the services. Now, here, if you have like different types of servers, right? And with the different services. Now, if you're limiting those servers with the particular services, now let's say I have a HTTP server, FTP server, then you guys can use static PAT. That can be used in bidirectionals for particular type of port numbers, for particular services. But overall, if you guys want to give all the accesses, I would go for static NAT. Are you guys getting my point, what I'm saying? So right now, I don't expect such a level of understanding. I just gave you a scenario. Static means bidirectional, both the ways you can make the connectivity, but in that also you have a conditions applied. So wherein you see internet, I mean like a traffic coming from the public to private or DMZ, such type of scenario or such type of translation is also called as a destination NAT or destination translation or incoming translation. Okay. destination translation or incoming translation. You can say like that also. Outgoing means from LAN to WAN, and incoming means from WAN to LAN. Other few questions also you might get in an interview. You might get it like, what's a see, we understood like source NAT, we understood destination NAT, we are understanding what's dynamic static, dynamic pat, static pat. Okay, they might also ask you what's pre-NAT, what's post-NAT. So can you guys write a note? I want all of you to write a note. Okay, make a Word file in which you guys will tell me, you'll write a note, okay, in which you'll define translation. Why do we need a translation? First question, answer. Why do we need a translation? Try to add more points for why translation. After that, write what's source translation, what's a destination translation. Right. After that, write types of translations like dynamic NAT, dynamic PAT, static NAT, or static PAT. Or you can make a differences, like make a difference between dynamic NAT and static NAT. Write a differences. Write the points like in a dynamic NAT. Write the same things relating with the static NAT. Do the things for the dynamic PAT and the same thing for the static PAT. Can you guys do these things? If you do some research and come, it will be more helpful for you guys to understand. Exactly. This is what I want you guys to make a note in a Word file and come for a class. And tomorrow also we'll see the practicals. Tomorrow we have to close this dynamic like translation chapter itself. Okay, I want note and I want you guys to send me to my email ID. I hope all of you are aware of my email ID. So please send it to my email ID and then only we'll see the practicals. Try to get more questions so that we can discuss in class. Okay. See you then.
Sir, questions for cybersecurity.
Wait. See, for cyber security, or you're asking like as a fresher, what type of questions you'll get? What are you asking exactly?
Yeah, sir.
For freshers, what you'll get the questions, right? 80% of interviews you'll have such type of questions, such topic questions. Take a picture.
Sir.
Complete all these topics. These points are very important when you go for a translation. I'm sorry, when you go for an interview. 80% fresher guys will get this. Okay.
Thank you, sir.